So first for the 3-minute intro is Maria Jukic.
Thank you. And great pronunciation on the last name. Thank you, Mary Jo.
That's because Melanie told me.
And I don't want to lose my time, but I was going to say Nikola Jokic, the basketball player, really helped in the pronunciation of my name. So, as you heard my name, I'm a child of immigrants from a union family, grounded in the Christian ethic of love your neighbor as yourself, an attorney. I had a healthcare career, former city councilwoman. I was born in Cleveland in a Croatian American family in a working class neighborhood. My mom was in the United Auto Workers. My dad was a draftsman. As Maureen said, I graduated from Villa Angela in Cleveland. I have a BA in American Studies from the University of Notre Dame, a master's in theology and religious studies from John Carroll, a law degree from Cleveland State College of Law, and a Fulbright Fellowship. I spent 24 years in healthcare doing marketing and PR at Euclid Hospital and arts and medicine at Cleveland Clinic until I got laid off last year. I served 4 years on Euclid City Council. I graduated from Leadership Lake County, and I served on several nonprofit boards. I also worked in manufacturing, community organizations, and international humanitarian aid. My family and I know hard work and struggle. I also know that having support, education, and opportunity can lead to the American dream. I love this country for our freedom and democratic values, the beautiful tapestry of America, the decency and generosity of its people, and the promise of liberty and justice for all. I want America to be the shining city upon a hill again, and I'm ready to fight for it. My main platform is fighting for the people. Today's system, as we all know, is rigged in favor of special interests, large corporations, the wealthiest among us, at the expense of regular people. I want to improve the lives of regular Americans and fight for us. I want to fight for the Constitution and the rule of law, stop this administration from continuing to violate the Constitution, and return some semblance of the rule of law. Fighting for healthcare access and affordability. I think it's immoral and unacceptable that 30 million Americans do not have health insurance and 100 million are in medical debt. I also think we need campaign finance reform and to overturn Citizens United. Urgent issues are foreign policy, affordability, immigration, the national debt, and the budget and the environment. I know that no one person can do all these things, and it will take humility, cooperation, and practicality to move any of these issues forward. I think I'm the best candidate to face Dave Joyce in November because I think I'm the only candidate who served in the legislative branch as an elected councilwoman, and I know what it takes to work with colleagues to get legislation passed. I'm also a woman, and it's time for a woman's voice to represent the 14th. And I have the nature and temperament to listen, learn, and find common ground. The only way for a Democrat to win is to build a big coalition of the massive middle. I think I can do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Next, we will hear from Justice Bill O'Neill.
I think I'm unmuted. Good evening, all. My name is Bill O'Neill. I think some of you know me, some of you may not. I like to keep it simple so that people will remember me, and there's really three of me. Uh, I'm a retired Lieutenant Colonel, United States Army, and I was awarded the Bronze Star for my service in Vietnam. The governor inducted me into the Veterans Hall of Fame, and now you know everything you need to know about my military service, with the exception of one thing. I'm the former commanding officer of the National Guard unit in Painesville. I know what guardsmen can do. I know what they cannot do, and I know what they should never do. Currently, the administration is using our National Guardsmen in Washington, D.C. as armed guards, and it is wrong, it's dangerous, it's unconstitutional, and it needs to stop immediately. I'm also retired as a justice on the Ohio Supreme Court. I was first on the Court of Appeals for 10 years in Lake County, and I was on the Supreme Court of Ohio for 5 years. I don't think there's any time in our history that more needs someone who understands the Constitution. I have ruled on the Constitution for 15 years. What is happening in Washington, D.C. is nothing short of an outrage. Even now, they're going forward with a war that has not been reviewed by Congress, which is a clear violation of the Constitution. I think my legal background will serve us well if you decide to send me to Washington. The third thing that surprises many people is at age 50, I went to nursing school at first Ursuline. I see we got some Ursuline people here, but I went to nursing school at age 50. I had the privilege of serving in the pediatric emergency department at Hillcrest and at Lake Hospital. And I think there's no question that leads me to the conclusion from what I have seen inside our healthcare, it is fundamentally wrong that 60% of Americans pay for government insurance that they don't get. The only answer for that solution is Medicare for all. David Joyce and Donald Trump recently took $800 billion out of Medicaid to pay for tax breaks for millionaires and billionaires who don't need tax breaks. The reality is that we have the greatest hospital system in the world, but we overpay for it and we deny access to way too many people. So if you remember anything about Bill O'Neill, I'm the registered nurse that says we need Medicare for all today. Thank you. That's
Thank
3 minutes. I did it.
you. Thank you. And our third candidate for the 14th Congressional District is Carl Setzer.
Hey everyone, my name is Carl Setzer, and I am running for the Ohio 14th. The Ohio 14th is where I was born and raised. I grew up on Hayes Street in Painesville, but when I was 18 years old, I left the region as the result of being raised by incredibly radicalized, poor, white, anxious, sad Christians that attended a doomsday cult in Leroy. In my travels, I've been in the American South. I've lived in Greece, but I've spent the majority of my adult life in Asia. My wife and I were in Beijing with our 8-year-old son when the city went into lockdown for COVID. We were also pregnant with who is now our 5-year-old daughter. Beijing gave my wife the notification that prenatal care was non-essential and that she would no longer be receiving access to her OBGYN. We decided not to fly blind, and muscle memory brought me back to Northeast Ohio, where I knew that she would get access to high quality medical care and we would be safe during the little storm that we didn't realize would become a global pandemic. During that time, I saw my wife, who was born and raised in China, show me how abundant and how amazing Northeast Ohio was, even though it was a region that I ran from for a majority of my adult life. Returning and seeing it through the eyes of an immigrant, I realized how privileged we all are to be residents of this region. And so I became active in political discourse, manufacturing, workforce development, anything I could do to use what I learned during my travels to try and support and help the Northeast Ohio region knock the rust off of the Rust Belt. The three policies that I stand on from my platform are Medicare for the working class. I think that Medicare for all is a wonderful idea. It is a crime that everyone does not have universal health care, but until we give the working class in America universal health care for the first time in generations, we won't be able to lobby against the Republicans who point at the working class and then point at everyone else and say, your tax dollars are going to pay for their health care. If we give the working class that dignity, we'll have Medicare for all within 15 years. My second platform is a revolution in workforce development. 700,000 people are expected to leave Ohio within the next 18 months. A majority of them are young people. I was one of those people. I ran from this region because I didn't see a pathway to be a member of society that didn't end up using the term I ended up in this job, trying to give the youth of America an alternative to college that brings pride back to the trades is something that will save our country and our future. My third platform is please leave us all alone. We need to create a consumer bill of rights that gives all Americans autonomy over their data and over their choice and over their lifestyle. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you all today.
Thank you. All right, now we've got a few questions and we're going to change up how we're going to answer here with the three of you. First question is, what would you do to protect voting rights and state control of elections? And do you support the SAVE Act? We're going to go with Maria first on this one.
And these are 2-minute responses, just to
I'm
remind you.
sorry.
Yep.
To protect voting rights and my thoughts on the SAVE Act, is that right?
Correct.
So the SAVE Act, if I were in a position, I would vote it down. What to do to protect voting rights? I think Congress really is not doing its job. There are a lot of ways that Congress could stand up to the overreach of the current administration, and they're not. So in terms of voting rights, we had the amendments for voting for African Americans and women. And then there was the Voting Rights Act, I think, in the 1960s that provided guarantees that didn't allow states to discriminate against people and to like block access from voting. And since a lot of that was overturned by the Supreme Court, we're in a position now where the states are abusing that leeway to make it harder for people to vote. So in Congress, all you can do is the federal level. And that would be to try to stop the administration and potentially Congress, depending on what they want to do, from making more bars to voting for people. A lot of it, unfortunately, is in the states. So the Ohio State Legislature has a lot to do to make it harder or easier for people to vote. So I would vote no on the SAVE Act, and I would contribute to Congress flexing its constitutional role to stand up to the overreach of the federal government and the administration.
Thank you. Next to you, Justice O'Neill.
Thank you. Let me make sure. Am I on? Yes. Thank you. I'm going to agree with Maria. The SAVE Act just I would clearly vote against it. Elections are done locally, and I've been on the ballot I don't know how many times. I have 100% certainty that the election laws in Ohio and indeed nationwide are adequate to guarantee fair elections. The SAVE Act is just another method of the Republican Party trying to limit access to the ballot. We just saw it yesterday in Texas. They had to go in the middle of a voting day to get a judge to make a ruling on the election procedures. They ended up extending the voting from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock. I believe 100% that the elections in America are fair and impartial, and they're run at the local level. I do not believe the federal government has any role here. I really don't.
Thank you. Carl?
Yeah, so like I mentioned in my intro, I was raised in a doomsday cult, and so I know something about when people with absolute power get a little too out in front of their skis. And the SAVE Act is one of those examples of authoritarians thinking that because they have a little bit of power, they can take all of it. When you look at the SAVE Act, what they're signaling is that all of the local boards of elections are not to be trusted, and that we need to have a federal documentation that proves a birthright or a citizenship. That's something that we haven't had at a national or a federal level in our history. And so the implementation of the SAVE Act will be ridiculous and will be a clown car. But what we need to remember is that when Republicans and when authoritarians do this, they're ostracizing even more Americans that are lunch pail government employees that are just trying to uphold our civic contract and uphold the American experiment. Those are opportunities for us as Democrats to reach across the aisle and pull more people into the middle and create a radically moderate future where we say enough is enough. It's time for us to trust our neighbors. It's time for us to trust ourselves. We don't need more federal overreach into determining how we represent our identities and how we represent ourselves. We need to make a more robust local connection because all politics are local. And we're not going to get the answers that we want when we make things partisan and inflamed.
Thank you. Okay, our next question is, how would you address healthcare costs and coverage as a member of Congress? We will go with Justice O'Neill first on this one.
It's a wonderful subject, I tell you. You know, we've got a real problem in America because, for example, the Cleveland Clinic is probably the best institution in the world, but 3 blocks away, you know, they have a neonatal crisis. We have people who do not have adequate health care. We spend more than any civilized nation in the world, and yet we exclude more people than any civilized nation. You look at Canada, everybody has health care. You know, when I was in Warren as a judge, Lordstown was down there, and at Lordstown, where they built the Chevy Cruze, they were spending more on health care for their workers than they were for steel. Healthcare has gotten out of control in America. The only solution is healthcare for our universal Medicaid for everybody. Medicare, boy, my get it straight. Medicare for everybody, and it's the reality is that we're all paying for it, but only 40% of Americans have government insured health care, and that's wrong. It's wrong on a moral basis. How are we uh, charging people for health care and not giving it to them? Medicare for all is the only answer. I'm a nurse. I've worked in the ER. I've seen what happens when uninsured people delay care and they show up at the emergency room at death's door. It's wrong. Medicare for all, period, non-negotiable.
Thank you. Carl?
Yeah. So again, like I said in my intro, one of my policy platforms is expanding Medicare to the working class. Again, I respect the idea of expanding it to everyone, but when we look at the system that we have right now, we have Medicare for everybody that's 65 and older. We have VA, which is Medicare insurance, and then we have Medicaid. And the largest group of people that do not have access to Medicare are the people that go to work every day, draw a wage from a salary or from an hourly W-2 or W-9. And they're the people that we expose to the meat grinder of private for-profit health insurance. Most people have to constantly worry about whether or not their doctors are in network. Every time you go to the counter at Drug Mart or CVS or Walgreens, it's like playing Russian roulette on whether or not your medication is going to be covered. And every pharmacist has to be not only a pharmacist or a pharmacologist, but also a therapist when they try to explain to you that it's not their fault. They don't control the price, but then they try to walk you through the systems that are available for coupons or rebates. There is no dignity in that for the working class, and we need to look at it from the perspective of allowing for the largest group of young and healthy Americans to be able to enter the rolls of Medicare, which will lower the cost of the VA. It'll lower the cost of Medicare for 65 and older, and it'll put us on a pathway to have Medicare for all within my generation. Thank you.
Thank you. Maria?
So the question was related to healthcare costs and coverage. Related to costs, I think big problems are the insurance companies, the pharmaceutical companies, the pharmacy benefit managers, the lobbyists who lobby Congress to make laws that benefit the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies and the pharmacy benefit managers. The dirty money in politics that we all talk about, that writes legislation based on what is best for those big companies that are making record profits. We need the federal government to step in, rein in monopolies, allow for negotiation with the drug companies for Medicare and Medicaid at a minimum. We also need long-term wellness and keeping people healthy. A lot of the cost of healthcare, and Justice O'Neill knows this from firsthand experience, really is from a lot of chronic conditions that if we as a society, as a country, focused more on how to help people get healthy and stay healthy and try to manage some of those things before it gets really bad, that would help. In terms of coverage, this is a tough one, I think. When I was doing some research on the 14th, somewhere it said that 91% of people have healthcare coverage. That includes Medicare, Medicaid, insurance, and other things. So that's a pretty high number. And my understanding too is that people want coverage, but they don't want to give up what they have, as meager as it might be. So I agree with the concept of the Affordable Care Act, and I was researching a little bit about Massachusetts because Massachusetts has a really high number of people covered, and I want to figure out how that is because although I believe that healthcare is a right, I think our country needs to take steps to get there, and I think lowering the Medicare age would be one step in that direction.
Thank you. All right. The next question is foreign policy is very much on the mind of voters with the military action in Iran. What do you think the primary issue in foreign policy is today? Start with you, Carl.
I mean, obviously, the main issue in foreign policy today is what is America's place in foreign policy today. We witnessed the use of military force and an act of war over the weekends on a country that was in active negotiations with the United States to be able to find diplomatic solutions to the question of Iranian nuclear development and where Iran's place is in the national or in the international community. I think one of the things that is most troubling for a lot of people that are unable to follow foreign policy as closely as their lifestyle would want to dictate is you wake up in the morning and you don't know what's about to happen. We're kidnapping presidents out of sovereign nations. In Latin America, we're launching military action in the Middle East. We're wish-washy about our support for Ukrainian national defense forces that are defending their country against Russian invasion. And these are not the American principles that we were raised to believe in. And these are not the values that we all think America stands for. My experience living abroad for over 20 years is I've felt what it feels like to be other. I've felt like what it feels like to be American in extremely un-American places. And our foreign policy, our diplomatic corps, and our projection of military force are what a lot of people around the world love America for because they provide stability and they provide an opportunity for free and fair trade. When we start using those levers and using those tools the same way that an authoritarian dictatorship would use them, we're contradicting the very soul of the American experiment. And the small role that I would play in Congress would be to bring us back to those founding principles.
Thank you. Maria?
The primary issue in foreign policy today is an out of control administration and our foreign policy on the whims of an unstable president. That is the biggest issue. Since he's been president and even the previous time, getting rid of our alliances that have kept this country and the world more or less stable since the end of World War II, killing people in boats in the Caribbean, as Carl said, kidnapping presidents of other countries, and not standing up for the human rights of people, particularly in Palestine, and now attacking Iran, which is the largest mistake that this president has done because of all of the repercussions that this could and is already leading to. So I would say the biggest foreign policy issue at the moment is to stop attacking Iran, pull back, and go back to the negotiating table for a diplomatic settlement to this before it gets out of control. Because my heart and the heart of people in this country is still broken for all of the losses we took in Iraq and Afghanistan. The lives that were lost, the people who were maimed, and all the lives that we're still losing today. I'm getting goosebumps from suicide from the military who were in those actions. We need to get the heck out of Iran and put some brakes on this administration and this president.
Thank you. Justice O'Neill?
It's a question I welcome. There's no question about it. My My dad was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross in World War II. I served in Vietnam, and my son is an Iraq veteran. He's a loadmaster on a C-130. So we are a military family, but we're also a legal family. We have a madman in Washington, D.C., that's just doing some really crazy stuff. I mean, I think we're at war with Venezuela right now. I'm not sure. He wants to be at war over Greenland. He now has invaded Iran. And I'm going to have to bring some focus here to this very evening and put it on the doorstep of Congressman David Joyce. The United States Constitution says unequivocally, the only body that can declare war in the United States of America is the Congress of the United States. And there's a reason that the forefathers did that. It was because they had madmen back then, too. It is unconscionable that we are at war in Israel. You may as well say it. We're in war in Israel, in Gaza. We're in war with Iran. The last time there has been a declaration of war by the United States Congress was in 1941 when Franklin Delano Roosevelt told him we had been attacked by the Japanese. So the bottom line is we have a member of Congress who I'm 100% certain this week is going to go along with the president, continue another endless war. It broke my heart today when I saw that four of those dead people in Iran are reservists, one of them a National Guardsman. We are sending our poor people to do the unnecessary, and David Joyce needs to stand up and say, this is wrong.
Thank you. Next question. If control of Congress is changed to the Democrats in the November midterms, what should Democrats do to ensure that the Justice Department and the Supreme Court are maintaining their roles as independent entities and not extensions of the Trump administration? We're starting with you, Justice.
Wow. I'm going to say something somewhat controversial as a Democrat. There are 7 reasonable men and women on the United States Supreme Court. You notice I didn't say 9, there's 7. You can guess which 2 I do not respect. I love our government. I like the way it is set up, but we've had problems recently that the government has become so partisan. Now that we have, Trump in his second term, we have got him laying down appointments throughout the judiciary, throughout the administrative forces. The Congress of the United States has advise and consent. They have the power of the purse. I'm going to have to say that when I'm elected, when the Democrats take over Congress, what we have to do is start saying there is 3 independent branches of government. The Supreme Court, I really don't have a problem with them. I really don't. I disagree with most everything they say, but I think the process is there. But more importantly, when you go to the administration, Congress is designed to turn off the faucet. I have said for the last month, not one dime for ICE. They murdered a nurse in Minnesota. They're doing nothing about it. And I am saying that Congress has the right, as an independent branch of government, to do their job. David Joyce has been on vacation more this year than he's been at work. There are some big issues here that are just sliding under the radar. And I'm saying, put the Democrats in order. We'll do our best. I mean, that's all I can say. But most importantly, these extended vacations while our government money is wasted and given to the billionaires has got to, I read the sign, it has to stop.
Thank you. Carl?
Yeah, so the independent nature of the judiciary and the Justice Department is something that I am quite passionate about. But one of the things that we're staring at right now is a generational moment because we're starting to see the norms and the pillars of how we think the government should work based on the Constitution be challenged and stressed to a point that we haven't seen before, at least not in the last 100 years. And so we're really looking at a 15 to 20-year effort from my generation and the next generation to try and define what our next New Deal moment is going to be for the American experiment. I was in Geauga County last year. Justice O'Neill was there. We listened to Mike Donnelly give a talk about the independent nature of the judiciary. But the feeling from the crowd was this uncontrollable anger that it doesn't matter what we believe the judiciary should be. What it is right now isn't what it should be. And so when we look at how the White House is interacting with the Justice Department, when we look at how the Supreme Court has been stacked to a 6-3 supermajority, we're starting to realize what it looks like if the wrong people start to push the wrong levers. But like I said with a previous question, these are actual opportunities for us to be able to redefine progress and redefine what the next generation of Americans want through the unmitigated arrogance of authoritarians and the previous generation. And so when we look at what the oligarchs, when we look at what Donald Trump is doing, when we look at what Republicans are doing, it's being fed by this arrogance of we can do whatever we want and no one's going to stop us. But the mechanisms are in our government, the mechanisms are in our Constitution for us to be able to lead the next generation of reform and change to better pull us closer to independent judiciaries and the form of government that we actually want as a people.
Thank you. Maria?
So the challenge in reining in the Department of Justice and the Supreme Court is the separation of powers and the beauty of the Constitution that we all should respect. So that's a challenge. The executive branch has a lot of control in appointing and how the Department of Justice is run. So that's a challenge. But to the justice's point about Congress having the purse, there is some room to do something there, in terms of funding those agencies. But the three things that I thought that Congress really could do is pressure, oversight, and lawsuits. Like when Pam Bondi was forced to testify in front of the congressional committee, that's very uncomfortable for them. If, Congress can really, especially if the Democrats take control, then we control the committees, the committee assignments, we control the hearings that can take place. So that's what Congress can do, is pressure, oversight, and lawsuits. In terms of the Supreme Court, very difficult, very difficult. I believe that at least 2 seats were wrongfully taken from Democratic administrations. And we all know, well, Mitch McConnell did that. But that's not how we used to roll as a country. It was like the Democrats get one and the Republicans get one. And that's just how we did things. And when that happened, it turned the Supreme Court, and it created what we have now. So I'm open to expanding the Supreme Court just to get it fair. I think most Americans understand that sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. But in this situation now, it's getting harder and harder for more progressive, liberal, human rights, civil rights policies to win. So expanding the Supreme Court. And there's the option of constitutional amendments.
Thank you. Next question. Do you support the current approach to immigration enforcement? And if not, what would you like to do to change it or do instead? Maria, I'm going to start with you on that one.
So I didn't even have a second to take some notes.
Do you want to give it up?
No. Immigration enforcement right now is going to go down as a stain on our country. It is inhumane, ridiculous. It is against what they said they wanted to do. I believe that most Americans have immigrant neighbors, documented or undocumented, it doesn't matter. And most Americans are fine with their neighbors, whether or not they're documented or undocumented. What this administration ran on was getting the bad guys out of the country. And I think everybody agrees to get the bad guys out of the country. But when you have decent people living in our neighborhoods, working in our factories and our farms and our service industries. They're not bothering anybody. They're trying to live the American dream. They should be given an opportunity to do that. And our immigration system and our immigration laws for, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 years, how long? It has been, again, lobbyists. And who wants it that way? Who wants to have all these people relegated to a constant second-class citizenship because they have to hide in the shadows? It's ridiculous. It's immoral. It's horrible. So, I mean, absolute, this cannot stand this type of secret police out there in our communities collecting people because they might have an accent or their skin is a little bit darker. I can't even tolerate it. So what can we do is, first of all, we can rein in, again, to the justice's point, the funding for ICE. Stop it. Like they have so much funding now, even now that the DHS funding is being withheld, ICE still has their money. So it's terrible. And what can we do is we can have true immigration reform. New laws give people a path to citizenship, make them citizens, not second-class citizens hiding in the shadows anymore. And most of the American people feel that way.
Thank you. Justice O'Neill?
Lake County has a very large um agrarian population, with the nurseries. When I was a lawyer in Geneva, I represented them, and they were people to be admired. Many of them, were just coming here as seasonals, and they would work, they'd do their job. They weren't breaking any laws. And, when I was at Hillcrest, one of my very absolute favorite doctors was Dr. Lupo, and he was born in a um immigrant health clinic in Bowling Green because his parents were seasonal Mexican workers. He's an MD. He was a wonderful person. He's a poster child for what we have failed to do as Americans. We have to have a pathway for citizenship for people who, particularly for people who are currently here. I mean, let's be honest. There's if you want to keep having a salad with your dinner, you better start looking at what the Trump administration is doing, because there aren't going to be migrant workers if they keep up what they're doing right now. And yes, I'm excited that I get to say it a second time in one night. Not a dime for ICE. Not a dime. They are murderous thugs, and they're being used to terrorize American citizens. David Joyce should be ashamed of himself. Ashamed of himself. As a member of Congress, he should be saying, this has to stop. But yes, I'm a strong believer, maybe the Biden administration left too many people in. I don't know. I don't have an opinion on that. But people who are here who don't have a criminal background, who are paying taxes, they're doing a job, they're raising their family, shame on us for chasing them around, rounding them up, and sending them to some for-profit prison in El Salvador. And by the way, don't get me started on for-profit prisons. This is embarrassing that America is doing this. We are all immigrants unless you're a Native American, every single one of us. I'm Irish, German, and come from the east side of Cleveland. Pathway to citizenship for legal people makes immense sense. And don't forget, there was a bipartisan bill last year that Donald Trump stopped the Republicans from supporting because he wanted to keep immigration alive as a hate issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carl?
Okay, so for me, immigration is an incredibly personal aspect of my campaign. My wife is a naturalized U.S. citizen as of 2 years ago. My son was born in Beijing, but has a U.S. consular birth certificate, so he could technically run for president as of right now, the rules. And my daughter was born in Willoughby during COVID, while her mother didn't even have a green card. And so for me, I live in a family of immigrants, not the memory of generations that came before me, but literal immigrants that came with me to my home. And it's my job to protect them and to give them the future that they deserve. But it's also a part of our national fabric to have a conversation about immigration that doesn't just end up with a pathway to citizenship, because a lot of people who are immigrants don't have any intention to immigrate. They're here because they have loved ones from where they're from that need medical care or need access to services that they cannot afford. And America is a beacon of light on a hill and brings a lot of people here for seasonal work and temporary work. But we've always misunderstood the immigration story to just mean, well, if people are coming here, then that means they only want to be a citizen, which means they might take away from something that other citizens need that were born here. But the reality of the immigration story to America is much more complex than that. And when we look at what we have in terms of needs for our country, childcare, elder care, service industry, agricultural work, all of the things that make America work, we need to have a reasonable immigration reform that gives people the opportunity to be overseas contract workers, work here legally with dignity, and pay payroll taxes so we can increase our tax base and provide more services and more opportunities for even more people. We need to have pathways for citizenship for those that want them, but we need to have a way for people to be here with dignity and for people to be here in a way that is legal and pays taxes without making them illegal or under or undocumented.
Thank you. Okay, next question. What can Democrats in Congress do to support public education at the federal level? Justice O'Neill.
I have many children, and we've funded a lot of educations. And the top of the heap is Katie, who has her law degree from Vermont Law School. But all my kids are publicly educated, and there's no question about that. I think one thing that bothers me is there's an entire generation of kids who've been lied to by the government. And the lie was do things right, participate in sports, graduate from high school, go to college, and you'll have an entryway to the American dream. And most of them are, now they can't afford a house, they can't afford to get married, they're just sitting on the sidelines. And one thing that is a problem is the student loan process that started probably 30 years ago. And I blame the bankers and the universities for doing what they did to an entire generation, which was, if you show up, we will give you not a scholarship, but a student loan. And the government said, yeah, that's a good idea. And the banks, once they had the government behind it, just did it. A majority of the student loans that are in place today are constitutionally invalid. They charge interest rates that we used to put people in jail for. I think the federal government needs to find a way not to forgive, but maybe to make him more fair. I think not everybody needs to go to college, but I think everybody needs an opportunity to either go to college or go to a trade school or get an internship. But I think the government needs to make sure that when this is happening, there is fairness in the system. There are people, and I've met them, who will not be out of student debt until they're 50 years old. And that's fundamentally wrong. That's fundamentally wrong because college is a good idea, but it's not for everybody. But those that avail themselves of the great American dream shouldn't be ripped off by the banks the day they get out of school.
Thank you. Carl.
Yeah, so the question of education is one that's very close to my heart as well. I was homeschooled. I didn't get to go to public school. I didn't really get to access all of the services that are provided to so many children in so many neighborhoods and communities around America. I was raised by people that thought we should be afraid of everything. And then I had to figure out how to teach myself, and then I had to figure out how to deprogram myself. And it was really only through those public services that I found little refuges. I was able to walk across Chardon Square after finishing my homeschool workbooks at my mother's office above Rickard's Bakery, and I got to sit at the Chardon Public Library where retired teachers would ask me, young man, why aren't you in school? And then they would sit there and they would talk to me about the things I believed and the things I should read and the things that I should learn. One of the things that we don't understand about the attack on public education that's being, calculated strategically is that there's two sides to the story. There's the ideologically irrational people that are hyper religious or hyper attached to their worldview, and they see public education as a threat to recruiting new people. And then there's the other side, and that's the side that thinks that everything in our life should make money for them and take money from us. And so anytime that we actually provide a high quality public service based on taxes drawn from our tax base and provide it to people, whether they have the money to pay for the private alternative or not, for-profit interests want to break those things, say that they've always been broken, and then replace them with for-profit alternatives. The American public school system is still one of the most enviable public services in the world. There is not an equal in populations that have similar density to us. China does not have an education system that provides high quality education to the poorest and the richest alike. That is an envy of America that has been replicated in places like Japan and has been replicated in places like Taiwan. It is something that deserves to be overfunded, protected, and used to create the next generation of scientists, thinkers, artists, and people that sit on their couches and do nothing. It's literally something that we should provide to everyone, regardless of their capabilities.
Thank you. Maria?
So, what can the Dems in Congress do to support education on the federal level? So, education, we could talk about preschool, K through 8, high school, post-secondary. Okay, 4 different areas. Then Congress has the purse strings. Congress can do a lot to direct money towards education. For example, the Department of Education that's been gutted for their oversight, civil rights, special needs for for children with disabilities to provide supports. I was just reading, some of you know, Paper Girl by Beth Macy and the Pell Grants, like how Pell Grants, I'm getting goosebumps, helped people get out of poverty and challenging situations to go to college, and to Carl's point, trade schools or whatever is needed, but the federal government can give money like the Pell Grants to help people go through secondary. I also think that some things, and I'd be interested to, talk to the school board people how the federal government could support K through 8 schools. But other things that the federal government can do that Congress can put money towards is things like mental health services in schools. Like Congress can allocate money that is provided to local districts to provide mental health. And then again, to the training point, can provide ways for people to become counselors and social workers to help with that. That's another thing they could do. And additional funding for extra staff. I'm not in education, but my understanding is that often there are federal government grants or programs that can get more assistance into the schools, can provide more programming, more resources. So I think those are things that the Dems in Congress can do to support education on the federal level. Although I'd be really happy to learn, in the coming weeks and months, how the federal government can support kind of K through 12 also. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last prepared question is, how can you convince the average worker that voting for Democrats in Congress will help their households financially? Carl, you're first on this one.
Can you clarify the question real quick for me, just so I use my time wisely?
How can you convince the average worker that voting for Democrats in Congress will help their households financially?
You got to stop telling workers that voted Republican the last time that they're stupid. We all need to understand that we can be righteous in our worldview without being condescending to people that are voting out of sadness, anxiety, and anger. We need to be a little bit more understanding of what it actually feels like. And I know this might yuck some of our yum, but people that do identify as the working class and go out there and get dirty and take showers before they go to bed don't have a lot of time to really understand all of the finer points of some of the Democratic Party's platforms and some of the Democratic Party's hopes for the future. What we can do to try to convince them that we have their best interests in mind is to stop telling them to vote against their best interests, because they have their best interests in mind and they're being out marketed and out advertised by political party that has figured out that we're kind of asleep at the wheel when it comes to the working class. We've taken our eyes off of the ball in terms of trying to figure out the best ways to do robust workforce development and robust applications of workers' rights and robust encouragement of pro-union and pro-organization policies through the Department of Labor. We've allowed for corporations to determine what the message to the working class is when the corporations literally have the worst possible intentions for the working class. And so it really just starts with, guys, we can really help you get a handle on the cost of living and the anxieties associated with your everyday life by expanding Medicare to the working class and giving you room to breathe and savings annually, but more robust healthcare than you've ever had in your life. And then we can also give your children more options for workforce development programs instead of taking $150,000 worth of debt that you cannot get rid of through student loans if you declare bankruptcy. And so if we give people in the working class the sense and the support that we love them and we want them to be a part of the American tapestry and to re-enter the big tent and join with us to try to execute the next great evolution in American progressivism, we won't be let down, but we have to stop telling them that it's their fault.
Thank you. Maria?
So I think before we could figure out how we can convince the average worker that the Dems can help their, how did we get here? And how did we get here that Sherrod Brown and Joe Biden, who walked the UAW picket line with union members, and Sherrod Brown, who saved pensions for, I don't remember if it was Teamsters or some other union.
Steelworkers.
And which one, Mary Jo?
Steelworkers.
Right? Right? And then the infrastructure bill, the investments in clean energy, like all of these things that actually did things for working people. And the working people didn't know about it. Why? Because of the Republican media echo chamber. That so many people, that's the only information they get. I don't know how to change that or fix that, but it's a reality that it allowed people like Sherrod and Joe Biden to not get the respect, the credit that they deserved for working households. I think the unions can do a lot because by definition, unions are for working people. And whatever we can do to try to support the unions, they have the facts, they have the members, they have the infrastructure to get that message across. I think that's important. But I think the most important thing is, except for the Republican echo chamber that's keeping people from information, is trust. Like I had told some of you guys through these last few weeks that I ran as an independent 2 years ago, and I was out there getting signatures from people left, right, and center. A lot of people out there really think that Democrats overall are evil, like evil, that there's no redeeming qualities. And there has to be a level of trust. Like, I'm a Democrat, you guys are Democrats. Like, people, to Carl's point too, about not being condescending to people, but showing a different Democrat or Democratic Party than is shown in some of that media. So it's got to be trust.
Thank you. Justice O'Neill?
I honestly think this is an easy sell. At the national level and at the state level, the Republicans control every single branch of government. Let's be honest. Now, we've got an intelligent public that knows they are in trouble financially. There didn't used to be a billionaire class in America. There didn't used to be a millionaire class. Let me give you all a math lesson that I had to look for, and I found it. When Dwight Eisenhower was the president of the United States in 1952, when our great generation was building the middle class, if you made over $400,000 a year, your taxes started going up substantially all the way to 90%. I don't think Elon Musk would consider that very good news right now, but the reality is, in today's dollars, that would probably be $2 million. We need to reform the fact that we are supporting a millionaire, billionaire class, but we're doing the work. It's just ridiculous. We have the the ability as a Congress to set policies. And the policy needs to be started with fairness. And it is not fair that a steel worker, for example, who has a good living, good wage, makes pays substantially more than a millionaire in taxes. It's just wrong. It's just absolutely wrong. So I think we have to go after the tax structure and make sure that millionaires and billionaires start paying their fair share. They haven't since 1960. And just look at how wealthy the wealthy have become. And that's not the America we were raised in. Our parents, came home from World War II. They built the greatest nation on earth. They helped build Germany. They helped build Japan. They could do great things. We somehow don't seem to have the money to do that anymore. And the reality is, we don't have the money because the people who are making the most money are not paying their fair share of taxes.
Thank you. As you can see, Melanie did put in the chat that was our last question. If you had questions, if you could post them there, and then I think Melanie's going to take it from there with the questions.
Well, thank you, Mary Jo, for moderating. Thank you, Kim, for your timing. I thought that was a really good discussion. So thank you to all of our candidates for participating. I learned a lot about each of you. Hopefully everybody who is on the call did too. We did try to cover, we crowdsourced those topics on the Progress NEO group on Facebook. Those were the areas that people wanted to hear more from you about. But if there are additional questions that people have, now is the time. We can go until about 8 o'clock, I think, if people do have additional questions. The other thing I wanted to add while we're waiting for folks maybe to get some thoughts together on questions, is that we did reach out also to the two candidates who are running for Ohio Secretary of State. Those are Dr. Brian Hambly and Representative Allison Russo. Unfortunately, both of them were busy tonight, so unable to join. But I did share a link to the town hall they did in January in Geauga County on the Progress NEO group page. And in our newsletter this month, and we can post that again so you can hear more from each of those candidates. And Allison will actually be here on Sunday, Sunday afternoon, if you'd like to come meet her at an event that we're doing for her as well. All right, we've got some websites in the chat, so please do check out their websites, their social media. I'm not seeing any questions. Oh, here's one. All right, so we will do this. Kim, do you want to ask yours since you posted it?
Sure. For the District 14 candidates, I would like you to talk to specifically what in your experience makes you especially suited to compete with Dave Joyce, especially in Lake County, where we're so traditionally, at least, pretty Republican oriented.
I can do that if you want. Am I on live?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. This is Justice O'Neill. I'll toot my own horn for a moment here. I was elected to the Supreme Court of Ohio statewide in 2012 by pledging to take no money from nobody because I knew the government was crooked back then and it's crooked now. I ran against an individual who had $2 million to spend, and I used $4,000 of my own money, and I won by 5 percentage points. I think it is time that we get money out of politics. I think everybody's tired of it. And in this particular district, these 5 counties, I've run 8 times and won 7 of them. I've run in this district more often than David Joyce has. I look forward to November.
Thank you. Maria or Carl, you want to jump in with that?
Maria, why don't you go first, if you don't mind?
Sure. Especially suited. So I mentioned it in my intro. I think being a woman helps. No offense to the guys. I do think that helps for a change, especially when reproductive rights are under assault and the SAVE Act and similar things are making it harder for women. So I think the perspective of a woman, again, really no disrespect. The other is because of my legislative experience, it was on city council, so that's, not Congress. But it showed me how that process works, and the three branches of government and the kind of things you have to do and the collaborations that you need to make and the all of that. I think that's helpful also. The third thing that I said earlier was just my nature and my temperament, which is kind of calm and open-minded, and that's going to be needed, I think, moving forward to respectfully engage with people, to hear their points of view, to see that there's validity in other people's points of view. I'm very open to that. And one other thing that really specifically is said to the experience, I think I'm in many ways a female version of, the Dave Joyce, right? Like the law, except, the law school and the University of Dayton and, kind of a similar path, but I'm more liberal and progressive to his, conservative and whatever else we want to call it. So it wouldn't necessarily be, I think, for people in the 14th, it might be a similar type of person who could pull people gently along to the more progressive, liberal, human and civil rights positions.
Okay, is it my turn? Great.
Yes.
So one of the reasons why I think I can beat Dave Joyce is because I'm nothing like Dave Joyce and I'm not a lawyer. The Ohio 14th is a district that is working class, agrarian, agricultural, rural manufacturing, and I look like I was made at the factory that makes people that come from the Ohio 14th. And so if we want to be able to acquire new customers, new voters to more progressive ways of thinking, we have to be able to relate to them. I was born and raised in Painesville. My parents moved to Montville because they believed that at Y2K, the world was going to end. And so we lived in a log cabin that when the power went out in the New England area in, I believe it was 2004, and it was the Great Blackout, our grid in Montville and Middlefield was the last to be turned on in America. That's how afraid my parents were of the government. And that's what a lot of people think when they think about Democrats in the 14th, is they've been taught to hate us. They've been taught to fear us. They've been taught to think that we're here to take something away from them, while everything they cherish is being taken away from them by Republicans. And so if we want to have a chance at beating Dave Joyce, unfortunately, in our current state of things, the guy who went to China and did the most American thing in the least American place on earth and built what became China's largest craft brewery is most likely going to be the one that can go to Jefferson and Conneaut and Montville and Niles and Warren and all of the amazing places in the Ohio 14th and say, guys, there's a better way to do this. We have a better plan. Please support us, because you've had 32 years of Republican representation, and Dave Joyce is not Steve LaTourette. He's a styrofoam cup. He hides from debate. He hides from confrontation, and he hides from his actions. And it's time for us to say that just Dave just isn't good enough.